Good morning, Idaho. I hope you're having a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when you're listening to this. Welcome to the Local Yokel Idaho podcast, where we talk about what is going on in the wonderful state of Idaho. This week, I will be talking about how Idaho is supporting Texas at the southern border, how a judge blocks a phosphate mine here in Idaho, and how lime is expanding in Boise. Join me for the morning banter and weekly facts, but if you're short on time and prefer to skip the banter, you can now use the new timestamp that is in the description to jump straight to the stories. Welcome to the morning banter. This is kind of a little bit of time I chat informally with you guys before we get into the rest of the podcast. I hope you all had a wonderful week and weekend. Definitely interesting this last week with all the storms and the weather. It kind of went up and down. The beginning half of the week last week was warm, and then the latter half of it had a bunch of rain, which is interesting for Idaho. For me, I was just like, oh, cool, we've got rain. That's fine. That's nice. You know, I just will have to adapt. There was some yard work I wanted to do and different stuff, and that didn't end up happening because, well, hello to rain. Kind of hard to work in the mud. But I was talking with my grandparents and stuff. I think it was like Friday evening or whatever. And the topic came up of the weather and different stuff. And it is interesting that there's rain in June. Usually about June time in Idaho, from what I can remember, it starts to usually heat up and get a lot more hot and stuff. And into July, then it's super hot for 4th of July. And then August is baking and stuff. But this year it seems to be a far more moderate summer. I mean, I'm probably jinxing it. And so, you know, as I'm recording this, it'll start getting really, really hot again. And everything will be normal. And it'll just be a fluke of Idaho. But I do have to admit, the added rain has been nice. It's been kind of relaxing to have that to cool off and keep things nice in the valley. And it's been nice for farmers. I have no doubt you guys are very, very happy about that attribute, that it's filling the reserves even more. You're not having to water. I know it's been nice not to have to water my lawn. It's just been like, cool, the rain will do it. I just need to wait a couple days and it'll rain again and I don't have to run the watering system. And all the fertilizers and growing plants and stuff work really, really well when it's like that. But thankfully, Saturday was clear because I ended up going for a hike, and that's partly why this podcast is a little delayed, because I was like, well, I'll go for the hike, and then I'll come back, and I'll just record. So, you know, I get some physical activity in the morning with the family, and we'll go for a hike and come back. Oh, my word. The hike we did was great. I loved it. It was up by, like, the Boise National Park. I think that's what it's called, up there towards Bogus or whatever, and really, really enjoyed it. But it has kind of this part where you start and then it drops down to this valley and then you have to climb out of this valley up to the top and then up on top of this mountain and then you get into this wonderful timber and stuff. But that really took a toll on me. I was so tired. I got back from that and I was just like, if I try to record, I'm going to sound like a zombie. And so I kind of fell asleep and other stuff. So I didn't end up recording Saturday, and then Sunday rolled around, which, you know, I'm not going to work on Sunday because it's the Lord's Day, and that's a day that I need to relax and recharge after a long week of working on this and other stuff. So it didn't happen then, so it's happening Monday. So you're probably going to hear this in the evening. I'm recording this here in the morning, and then I should have it all ready and packaged and to go out in the evening, hopefully. Fingers crossed. A little tight on the production timeline there. But in any case, going on the hike was really, really pretty. It was nice that it didn't rain, so I was able to go out and do that. I didn't end up taking the drone. It was a little too much weight that I didn't want to bring. And then also I had a brand new hiking backpack. I got one from REI, which is also an interesting story. REI, this one backpack, I think it's called the Flash Pack or something 22. I'm horribly butchering the name here. And that was the one I kind of wanted because I wanted a daily type of hiking backpack. I might get a heavier grade one for longer trips and stuff and backpacking trips. But that was the one I wanted, and it comes in like 4 colors, I think. There's one that's like a jet black, then there's like a beigeish brown type of one, which is the one I have. Then there's kind of this weird tealy green, and then I think it's either a bright orange or bright pink, and I didn't want the black one because I don't want to be burning up. And then I didn't want the pink or bright orange or whatever one, and the teal green just didn't seem quite right. I wanted the kind of brown or beige one, and that ended up being the one that was sold out. So I was like, okay, cool. REI has this like cool feature. You can go on there and put your email in and tell them to update you when they get the backpack in or whatever item that you're wanting them to. And I did that. And then they sent me an email at like 5:25 in the morning or whatever. And then later in the day, I woke up, I saw it, and I was like, oh, cool. I'll order that after I get done with breakfast on the computer and stuff. Because, you know, it's not always the funnest experience to make orders on your phone. And I make breakfast, and I go down and everything, and I get ready to order it. And then it's already out of stock again. I'm like, what the? No. So then I put got back on the list again for them to let me know when they got it back in stock. And then I got to work or whatever in the afternoon, and then I saw that it was back in stock and I had to order it really quick. And I'm glad I got it. And it's been really enjoyable. It has a nice pouch in there for like my water bladder to go in there. And then everything else, it worked out well. There's almost a pocket I could put there for my power bank, and then I could run a cable out through the top of the backpack and down, so I could plug it in my phone for my All Trails app and everything. So it all worked out very, very well, and I enjoyed it for the hike. I mean, it's not something, I think I may have overpacked it a little bit. That may have been my issue. I don't know. But still really, really enjoyed the backpack, and it was a good kind of trial run. Granted, very, very tired from that hike. So that's on me for kind of misjudging the amount of energy it would have taken to do the hike and then get this recorded and everything. But hey, it's coming out now. You guys are getting it. Sorry for the slight delay. Hopefully it wasn't too much of an inconvenience. But in any case, that's all I have to share. Not a ton this last week happened for me besides the hike. I was just working on this. I was actually doing really good. I thought I was going to be on time, but the Lord had other plans for my life. But in any case, we'll move into the holidays and weekly facts here, and then we'll move on into the stories. Starting off with Monday the 12th of June, which is National Peanut Butter Cookie Day, Jerky Day, and National Red Rose Day. As for in history, in 1864, the Battle of Trevilian Station in the American Civil War ended. In 1931, Al Capone was indicted on 5,000 counts of prohibition and perjury. In 2010, Toy Story 3 premiered at the Taormina Film Festival in Italy. It was the first animated film to earn $1 billion. And then in 2018, at the Singapore Summit, Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Trump met for the first time, making it the first time North Korean leader and an incumbent U.S. president had ever met. As for birthdays, Monday was George H.W. Bush's and Anne Frank's birthday. As for deaths, in 1963, Medgar Evers died. And in 2003, Gregory Peck died. Next, we have Tuesday the 13th of June, which is National Weed Your Garden Day, Sewing Machine Day, and World Axe Throwing and Softball Day. As for in history, in 1866, the U.S. House of Representatives passed the 14th Amendment. And in 1956, British troops left the Suez Canal zone in Egypt. As for birthdays, Tuesday was Basil Rathbone's and John Nash's birthday, and is Tim Allen's 69th and Chris Evans' 41st birthday. As for deaths, in 1871, Robert Houdini died. In 1986, Benny Goodman died. In 1987, Geraldine Page died. And then lastly, in 2008, Tim Hurst died. Moving into Wednesday the 14th of June is National Cucumber Day, National Flag Day, and is the birthday of the U.S. Army. As for in history, in 1777, the U.S. Continental Congress adopted the Stars and Stripes flag, which was designed by Francis Hopkinson. In 1940, the Auschwitz concentration and extermination camp opened in Nazi-controlled Poland. And in 1982, Argentina surrendered to Great Britain, which ended the 74-day Falklands Island conflict. As for birthdays, Wednesday is Donald Trump's 76th birthday, and in deaths, in 1801, Benedict Arnold died. Thursday the 15th of June is National Megalodon Day and Natural Photography Day. As for in history, in 1775, George Washington was appointed the Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army. And in 1940, France surrendered to Nazi Germany. As for birthday, Thursday is Kim Jong-un's 69th and Courtney Cox's 58th birthday. As for deaths, in 1849, James Polk died. And in 1996, Ellen Fitzgerald died. Moving to Friday the 16th of June is National Fudge Day. As for in history, in 1858, Abraham Lincoln famously said, quote, "A house divided against itself cannot stand," end quote. In 1884, the first roller coaster was used in Coney Island, New York. In 1962, the Soviet space mission Phosphate 6 launched the first woman into space. And in 2015, Donald Trump launched his campaign for the Republican nomination for U.S. president. As for birthdays, Friday was Adam Smith's and Geronimo's birthday. In deaths in 1722, John Churchill died. In 1858, John Snow died. And lastly, in 1959, George Reeves died. Next, we have Saturday, the 17th of June, which is National Mascot Day, Cherry Tart Day, and National Root Beer Day. As for in history, in 1837, Charles Goodyear obtained his first patent for rubber. In 1856, the Republican Party opened its first national convention in Philadelphia. And in 2018, Incredibles 2 came out. As for birthdays, Saturday is Martin Bormann's birthday. And as for deaths, in 1947, Maxwell Perkins died. And lastly, we come to Sunday, the 18th of June, which is Father's Day, National Go Fishing Day. I wonder how that ended up happening. And National Turkey Lovers Day. As for in history, in 1812, the War of 1812 began between Britain and the U.S., with the U.S. declaring war against Britain. In 1815, at the Battle of Waterloo, Napoleon and France defeated the British forces. In 1928, American aviator Amelia Earhart became the first woman to fly across the Atlantic Ocean. And in 1940, Winston Churchill gave his quote, "This is our finest hour" speech at the House of Commons. As for birthdays, Sunday was George Mallory's birthday, and is Paul McCartney's 80th and Richard Madden's 36th birthday. As for deaths, in 1936, Maxine Gorky died. And lastly, in 1974, Georgy Zukov died. Now, moving into the news here with our first story. Idaho stands with Texas. This comes by the Coeur d'Alene/Post Falls Press by Devin Weeks. This last Monday, Governor Brad Little held a press conference at the Stant Craft Jet Center in Hayden, Idaho. The press conference went over the southern border and Idaho's involvement in helping Texas. Little stated that the Idaho State Police troopers are providing support for Texas at the southern border, while the troops are enhancing their knowledge through experience involving cross-border smuggling, human trafficking, and drug interdiction. They will share their training with other law enforcement agencies in Idaho. He then went on to state that the fentanyl problem is because of the Mexican drug cartels, that any chaos on the border gives the cartel a better opportunity to do their bad things, such as human trafficking and drug trafficking. So to keep helping and respond to this, Little has announced his plan to assemble legislators, law enforcement personnel, and others in the coming weeks to discuss various ways Idaho can continue to assist neighboring border states and gain further drug interdiction experience to protect communities in Idaho. Which I kind of saw a precursor to this. If you go to Mr. Little's Twitter page, he has an article there talking about where he went down and visited at the southern border and a bunch of the different things that they're doing down there. I will be perfectly honest, I didn't go cross-check to see, how many people and stuff is he sending down there or different things and yada yada. But I'm really excited personally to see that involvement is occurring. I don't care what side of the political aisle you're on or whatever else. I think we should all be able to agree that there's a reason for borders. If there's a border, that means there should be a certain amount of security to it. I'm not against immigration at all. I don't think anyone in the U.S. should be. This is a country that's kind of built on people immigrating to the U.S., and so we should be able to allow them in. But there is the legal means of coming into the United States, and that's the way that you should come, not illegal. You should not be an illegal immigrant and trying to cross the border illegally. Those borders should be secured, and you should come in by the legal means. Now, I could hear one person come back with a counter argument saying, well, the legal system's so slow and it's so bad and I can hardly ever get through it and it's going to take forever and ever and ever. And I'm like, cool. Well, then as both sides of the political aisle, we should be able to come together. And if that's the problem, let's solve that. Let's make the immigration system more efficient. Let's make it quicker. Let's cut down on red tape. Let's figure out how to make this work. Is this an issue of funding? Is this an issue of staffing? What is the issue that is causing this to be a problem? Let's fix this rather than just opening the border up wide. So I'm glad to see that Idaho is standing with them, trying to help, sending support down there to help Governor Abbott, I think is the name for Texas down there, and all the different stuff, because the numbers you're hearing are just kind of crazy, the amount of people that are coming over the border into the U.S. illegally. It's maddening. And plus, even if you're saying, the people are trying to get away from despot leadership and different things and a better life, okay, you can make that argument. I would still say that mass of humanity's coming in unregulated, ungoverned in this sense. Just like kind of Brad Little gave in his speech, it opens the door for the cartels down in Mexico and other bad actors to get into that fray, in through those means, to get things in the U.S. that really shouldn't be here. The level of drug smuggling and human trafficking, of course, which I think all of us should be able to agree is not good whatsoever. Next, on a little bit less of a political note, ACHD launches interactive bicycle map. This comes by KTVB7 by staff. As someone who has lived in Boise for 15 years and used to bike as my main mode of transportation, Google Maps is all right, but at the end of the day, it's designed for cars, not bikes. Well, the Ada County Highway District is trying to help out with that issue. They've launched a new online interactive bicycle map for Ada County. It shows people where all the bike paths and networks are via a color-coded system. That way you know which routes are which. Plus, it also includes the location of libraries, bike shops, schools, parks, and hospitals. And also for those that may not have internet and don't want to put it on their phone, you can also reach out to them and get a physical copy of the map from ACHD. But the coolest part about this new map is that people can report incidents, new bicycle facilities, and helpful tips for other bikers, which is super cool to see. In the top part of the script of this article, I kind of stated that Google Maps is great. It does great at a lot of things. I think it does pretty well if you're having to walk around. It will adapt accordingly pretty well. Cars, we all know it does great. There's a lot of people that use it. Personally, I enjoy Waze. That's a different discussion for a different time, shall we say. But I will admit, when I lived in Boise for 15 years, I'm out in Caldwell now, it was a little bit difficult to use navigation apps to try to get around, because you had all this robust applications for people who use cars and stuff, where you've got Waze and Google Maps, and it can give you kind of like traffic updates and kind of route you around things and different stuff. But for bicyclists, it really didn't work well, because what I mean that you have to approach it a little bit differently, because the bicyclist is going to want, okay, cool, I'm wanting more shade. I'm going to want more of an even grade to the road so that I'm not having to work as hard. I don't want really huge intersections. I want you to keep me away from those. It's super easy for me to go to a smaller intersection and get across that way. I need lights to protect me, yada, yada. When Google Maps and others don't quite capture that, in my experience, and they may have gotten better in recent years because I haven't biked in a long time. But in any case, it's really cool to see that Ada County is doing this and building this map out for people, and that they're also integrating kind of a crowdsourcing type of thing that people can update it in live time, because that's always kind of the fear, especially with government-run things, that it'll just become inaccurate and a big bureaucracy and everything. You're like, well, cool, I have this resource, but it was updated like several months ago and it's completely out of date, and this doesn't help me at all, rather than actually having people that can report in live time things that are going on, so that the highway district and stuff can try to respond or help, or it can inform other bikers on the road, plus helpful tips for people. I know one of the areas, it's not biking, but like hiking, trying to figure out, well, how should you pack your pack, and how should this work, and yada, yada. It's so difficult. I mean, even with the internet, it's been hard to find good facts on like, well, this or that or wherever else. And so having places where you can kind of get those tips easy and then bundled with the stuff you're already using is really cool. It's also nice to see that they offer the paper or physical map option for those that don't have internet, where you're like traveling, you're like, well, I don't want to be using a phone on my bike ride. I want to have something a little bit easier. Than the idea of having something physical probably is a little bit more appealing. I'm glad they're doing it, and hopefully it's helpful for all you guys there in Boise with your biking around town. This next story here is very exciting for the state, and particularly Boise. Boise chef wins James Beard Award. This comes by several sources. I love food, and you probably love food as well. But have you ever wondered who is the best chef in the Northwest? Well, here is your answer for that. This last Tuesday, not one, but two chefs from Idaho competed in the James Beard competition, and one even won for the first time in its history. For context, the James Beard Award is considered one of the highest honors one can achieve in the American culinary world. Two chefs were there from Idaho: Chris Komori, who co-owns and is the head chef at Kine, K-I-N, and Salvador Alamilla, who owns Amano in Caldwell. They both were competing in the Best Chef Mountain region, which covers Colorado, Utah, Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho. In the end, Mr. Komori won the James Beard Award, making him the top chef in the previously mentioned states. He's also been nominated for the award 4 other times before finally winning it this year. Quoting a section of Mr. Komori's victory speech, quote, It's my name on the award, but I think everyone here understands how many people it takes to even get to Chicago for this. So this is for all those people that have gotten me that far. We are incredibly lucky to have such a group of people that pour their heart and soul into a place that others would just call a job, Komori said, referencing his staff who were in attendance with him at Chicago. They are genuine, thoughtful, and beautifully unique, so this is for you. And then lastly, this is for the city of Boise and the whole Treasure Valley of Idaho. When we get home, we'll celebrate together, end quote. Super, super, super excited to hear. It was cool to see that we actually had 2 people from Idaho that were ending up in this award. Granted, I will be fully honest, I am not a big foodie in the sense that I follow a bunch of the competition and this head chef and that and everything. I have no doubt that world exists out there and there's no problem with it. I don't follow it. I didn't even know this was such a big award or whatever, but I did a little bit of research and apparently it is. So it's really, really cool to see that one of the chefs that won the award, I'm guessing it looks like it's kind of regional in that sense. You have the Northwest and then you've got other parts of the country and stuff. Won the Northwest here in Idaho, which is crazy to think because you would think someone in Seattle or Portland or some of the bigger cities here in the Northwest would win it with some crazy cooking or whatever else. So it's cool to hear that kind of the best chef, according to their judging, here in the Northwest is here in the Treasure Valley, no less. Plus that there's 2 of them. I mean, it's sad to hear the gentleman from Caldwell didn't end up winning the award because, you can only have one, shall we say. But it's cool to see that there are 2 establishments here in the Treasure Valley area that you can go, or if you're somewhere else in Idaho, you can travel close to the Treasure Valley and taste world-class, or American class, shall we say, food, which is super, super cool to see. If I have some time, intend to drop by his place and try out the food there. If you guys have been to either of those establishments, I think the first one was Kin and the other was Ammon in Caldwell. I will admit I've heard some good stories from people about the Ammon in Caldwell. I've walked past it several times. I've just never gone in. They have actually quite a heavy tint on the window. It's a nice looking building, but the tint's really heavy. It's probably nice, keeps it nice and cool in there. I hadn't heard about the Kin that's there in Boise. Then again, I don't travel a lot downtown in Boise, just mainly for parking, and it's a little bit more crazy. I'm more of a country fellow myself, but cool to see. Congratulations to him winning the James Beard Award, and we look forward to seeing what amazing things he does into the future. This next story is one that will be wonderful in the winter. Granted, we're not there anymore, kind of going into summer. But in any case, indoor turf facility in Pocatello. This comes by the East Idaho News by staff. The Idaho Central Credit Union is partnering with the Pocatello Chubbuck Auditorium District to build a new indoor turf facility in Pocatello. The facility will be 30,000 square feet and be available for a variety of uses, including soccer, baseball, softball, football, and lacrosse. It will also be used to host trade shows, dances, cheer competitions, wrestling tournaments, and gymnastics. According to the Idaho Central Credit Union, Chief Marketing Officer Michael Watson said the credit union is excited about the new facility. Quote, "The credit union looks for an opportunity to invest in the quality of life of our community where it can have a confidence in the investment will be managed for the long-term benefit of the community's residents," Watson said. The Auditorium District has done a phenomenal job of managing the Mountain View Event Center to be a real asset for the community. We couldn't be more excited to invest in this new and much needed facility, end quote. When finished, the facility will be located next to the District Exit Mountain View Event Center and is expected to be completed in the spring of 2025. The facility is designed by Myers Anderson Architects of Pocatello. Very, very cool to see. When I was doing research and finding articles, I saw this one come across my radar and I was like, oh yeah, that's a thing that exists, and that would be kind of nice in Idaho to have a place that's cool. It's an enclosed area. You can go into it, and you've got turf and stuff. And yeah, it can be raining and it can be snowing outside, but you can still do kind of sports activities and keep yourself sharp and enjoy that even in the middle of winter, which is a really, really cool idea. I had never thought of it before. I mean, you have that kind of for big NFL teams where they'll have their not competitions. My brain is blanking the word at the moment. But we'll have their stadiums or whatever can be enclosed and they have the turf and everything so they can practice or play games whenever they want. But the idea of that kind of coming down to a smaller size for the community sounds really, really, really cool. That you can kind of fit whatever you want in there, and you kind of have that same lawn environment or whatever. Granted, I will admit it would have even been cooler if they went for actual grass, and then the whole thing's like this greenhouse thing. That's just me speaking. But I thought that would be really cool. You've got like a dome over the top, and it's like a greenhouse type of thing. And you actually have actual lawn and lawn keepers, but that probably takes way more maintenance and way more care rather than putting down kind of the fake grass sod and stuff and everything. And then people can regularly come in and do that. But hey, for you over there in Pocatello, you guys have a really cool place coming down the pipeline to do some activities in the winter months when it's snowing outside, and you can have that wonderful feeling of being on a lawn and do different sports and stuff in the middle of winter. But moving into our next story here, this one also is kind of political, and I will probably rant about this a little bit. Idaho Phosphate mine blocked by judge. This comes by several sources. So we talked about this a little bit ago. There was a mine that was approved to go in, but now a judge has put a curveball into that. The federal judge has blocked a proposed phosphate mine in southeastern Idaho, saying that the federal land managers in the Trump administration did not properly consider the mine's impact on sage grouse. The judge's decision was issued on Friday. U.S. District Judge B. Lynn Windmill found that the U.S. Bureau of Land Management, BLM, violated the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, and other laws when it approved the mine. Mr. Windmill found that BLM failed to consider the indirect effects of processing ore at a nearby plant and the cumulative impact on sage grouse. The mine, which was proposed by P4 Production LLC, a subsidiary of a German pharmaceutical giant Bayer AG, would have extracted phosphate ore from 2 open mine pits, or would then be processed to produce glyphosate, the active ingredient in Roundup, the most widely used herbicide in the world. As for what is next for the mine, it is unclear what will happen next. Bayer AG has said it plans to appeal the decision, but it is also possible that the company could decide to abandon the project altogether. The U.S. Department of the Interior said it will continue to work with stakeholders to ensure that any future development in the area is conducted in a responsible and sustainable manner. Which I definitely have a bit of an opinion on this. And people will disagree with me, but I will try to lay the groundwork as I go into this here. One, I understand we do want to take care of our natural environment. I'm not a person that's sitting here and says, I don't care about the animals, I don't care about the trees, I don't care about the beautiful creation that God has given us. Let's just bulldoze it under for heavy industry and giant factories and do whatever we want. I'm not saying that at all. There is a certain level where it is good that we have agencies that try to watch out for and make sure the things that we improve have a low to reasonable impact on the environment that is all right, not overly dumping a bunch of waste into rivers where it kills off a lot of stuff, not strip cutting entire areas that should be left alone. I totally am on board and understand that. But on the flip side, I feel that environmental groups personally go way, way, way too overboard about stuff, that there's a line where, cool, we have the environment, but then we also can't sit here and not do nothing. There is a certain level that, yes, man, I would argue in the Bible, God says we have dominion over creation. We were given that role. And that means that we, in that sense of authority, are higher than the creation. And thus, we do try to take care of the creation that God has given us and given us authority over to. And do we fail at it? Yes. But that doesn't mean that the bullfrog is more important than the flourishing of human life and productivity. So, with that said, coming to this, if there truly is some bird or sage grouse or different things there that they feel that there is some impact, then yeah, let's be careful and stuff and different things and look at that. And maybe, yes, I could totally give grounds where maybe the approval by the environmental agencies was wrong and they need to go back and re-review that and everything, and we'll see what ends up happening with the case. But if it's just because there is a bird there and that bird could easily be moved to some wildlife refuge that is nearby that has that exact same environment, and those birds will transition into that, and there is this amazing resource that will add tons of jobs, tons of benefits for us as a country, financially, economically, nationally, internationally, for security and different things, makes us dependent, and allows for people to have sustainable jobs making an American product here in the U.S., I don't think that's something that we should try to use the environment to block. There were a lot of towns and stuff in Idaho that were about logging and mining and stuff, and a lot of those towns are kind of dying out because the environmentalists got so crazy about blocking mines and blocking timber cutting and different things that those towns slowly shriveling up because people don't have any other work to do in those areas. You can't do farming, you can't do these stuffs, and then it puts people into big cities where we all know the quality of life in a big city is nowhere near the quality of life out in the countryside. I could see where someone could argue that, yeah, in the big city, you've got these medical services and yada, yada, but everyone's crammed in. You have less land. It's more expensive. No one owns anything. And you aren't able to be out in the beautiful creation that God gave you rather than someone that lives up in the beautiful Sawtooth Mountains and gets to enjoy that and their family and the beauty of that and not being around a ton of people and a ton of traffic and you know your neighbor and you all go to church. That's way better. But that was killed in the cradle, or not in the cradle, but was killed because environmentalists didn't like mines and tree trimming and different things that was, or lumber cutting, shall we say. So in any case, it'll be interesting to see what happens going forward here. I'm hoping the mine does get approved and go forward because any amount of domestic production of anything, in my opinion, is good to bring that production back to the U.S. that we're not importing, but we're exporting or using things in state or in country, shall we say. So hopefully this will get overturned, all work out. Maybe there are some details I'm missing. If there's something that I am missing, that this truly was a huge oversight or yada yada, then please send it over to me. I'd love to look at it and maybe kind of correct my opinion or perspective on it for next week's episode. Kind of continuing with the slightly political theme, Idaho National Guard goes overseas. This comes by KTVB7 by Kara Valentine. Last week, about 250 airmen from the Idaho's Air National Guard were deployed to Africa and Europe for several multinational training exercises. The exercises included were Air Defender and African Lion, which are designed to test U.S. military strategic readiness and to strengthen military relations with allied partners. The first Air Defender involved 100 airmen from Idaho's Air National Guard. Their exercise is a NATO-led exercise that takes place in Germany, the Czech Republic, Estonia, and Latvia. It is designed to improve air defense capabilities and to test the ability of participant nations to work together. The second African Lion had 150 Idaho Army National Guard soldiers involved in the U.S. African Command-led exercise that took place in Morocco, Ghana, Senegal, and Tunisia. The exercise is designed to improve interoperability between U.S. and African forces and to test the ability of participating nations to respond to a variety of crises. In summary, both exercises were meant to keep the U.S. military forces ready and to make sure that they can properly work with other countries should the need arise to do so. Always awesome to see countries working together, specifically the U.S. with different people to be like, hey, we're not trying to be a big bad guy on the block. Let's try to learn and figure out how to work together so that if something does happen, communication barriers, standards, units, these are always kind of difficulties that occur in militaries and different stuff, especially when one guy's like, well, that's what we call a tank, and we measure our distance in kilometers and not miles, and the U.S. is trying to interact, and like, I don't, what? You're speaking gibberish to me. So doing these exercises is really, really good, I would agree with the U.S. military to kind of keep personnel understanding and experience should the need arise to be deployed in those areas and different stuff so they can help with local forces and not just be a bulldozer that we're like, we are the U.S. We are going to now do whatever we want and we're not going to help or utilize those that are there that would want to help us otherwise because we do it the American way. Always good to see that. Hopefully those airmen all learned a lot and got back here safely to the States. I don't have a ton of commentary to give on it because I don't have a background in kind of the military, law enforcement, different stuff. I have some friends that do. That all went well and they got back safely to Idaho. Now we come to our last story and the fun one. I try to save the fun one for last. Lime expands vehicle fleet in Boise. This comes by the Boise Dev by Margaret Carmel. For many of us around Idaho, we have not run into the green and white colored electric scooters or public vehicles, but if you travel around Boise, you'll find them everywhere. They are part of a network of vehicles that people can use their phones for a price to unlock and travel around as they please. This last week, Lime, one of the biggest providers in Boise, made a deal with the city. This comes as Boise is hoping to change the way people think about e-scooters. Instead of them just being a fun way to get around town, the city wants e-scooters to be seen as a viable transportation option. So to do so, the city is making a number of changes to the way e-scooters are operated in Boise. Number one, Boise is contracting with a single company, that being Lime, to operate all these scooters in the city. The hope is that this will make it easier for the city to manage e-scooters and ensure they are being safely used responsibly. For example, they will be expanding the areas where e-scooters can be used. In the past, they were only allowed in downtown Boise and near Boise State University. Now they will be allowed all over the city, including in neighborhoods and near transit stops. Although this comes with a string attached, e-scooters will have to park in designated areas to prevent them from blocking sidewalks and other areas. To encourage people to park them in the designated areas, unlike in the past where people would park them wherever they wanted, people will get a $1 discount when they put them in the designated parking areas. Also, on a minor note, they have their e-scooters, but they will also be adding variants that you can sit on and bike ones. Lastly, Lime will be revamping its price structure for this new rollout. In the past, it cost $1 to unlock the scooter and 36 cents per minute of use after. But now they will be offering a multi-day/month pass you can buy. That way you don't have to pay every time that you want to ride, which I think is kind of interesting to see. I mean, I think a lot of people in Boise have their own bikes, and by all means, having your own bicycle or your own e-scooter or whatever else is always going to be cheaper than using something like this, public transit, whatever else. But if you're someone that needs to get around occasionally, maybe you drive into town from Caldwell, Nampa, or different stuff, and you can park your car somewhere and then use one of these scooters to get around, and your car isn't large enough to fit a bike or your own thing in, then I think this is a really cool way to do this. Also, hopefully it will cut down on congestion and different stuff in Boise, because the idea of, there's a lot of people that will drive their cars into town, and then you just have this one car with this one person, but, you have the car, it's like 4 feet across and 6 feet long or whatever, taking up a space in the road. You could have that same person on the sidewalk with the small little scooter that they're driving or sitting on, or bike or whatever. That decreases that cost a ton, and the area that they're utilizing the road, hopefully cutting down on congestion a little bit. I also like the approach they kind of did here to try to manage where they get parked, because I know in other big cities where they've had kind of these ride-sharing electric scooter things, people have just left them in bad spots where it's called traffic things, where people have just left the bikes out in the road, and then they stop traffic and person has to get out of the car and get them off the road so people can drive safely, or people parking them in front of doorways and shops and stuff, and people trampling over them and different things, and them causing a lot of issues and chaos. So I'm really glad to see, and I kind of really like the idea that Boise ended up having, being like, hey, we have designated areas. We recommend you use those areas. I think there may be a small penalty attached to it. Granted, you can't police everyone, but incentivizing it by saying, hey, if you put it in the designated zone, that $1 unlock fee almost just completely goes away. You get a discount, but you just have to park it in these zones. Granted, I wonder if how they're doing that, if like the parking zones have like NFC, or they communicate with the bike, so when the bike gets in the zone it can do the handshake and it's fine, or is it GPS, because GPS can be really all over the place. I mean, a perfect example that you guys probably have experienced is I remember Chick-fil-A did an update to their app, and when you get to the restaurant, you'd be like, cool, I'm at the restaurant now, and I'm pulled into like the curbside pickup or whatever, and you pull up in your app to go say, hey, I'm at the curbside, and it wouldn't give you the option because the GPS wasn't accurate enough to see that you were in the parking lot. It thought you were like the block over or whatever. And you're like, but I'm here. And so you had to like figure out how to override it or just walk in. So hopefully they're not using GPS for that, because I feel like that might be a little fickle, including the fact that Boise has a lot of trees, kind of in the name, shall we say. And GPS kind of doesn't sometimes play nicely when you have a lot of trees blocking your signal transmission there. One thing I will note on this, really positive. I think a lot of this is cool. Little dubious about the city going down to a single contractor. I get why they're doing it. Makes it simple, but kind of worried about Lime will start slacking off and different stuff and competitive stuff, blah, 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 blah. But that will be something to see down the line. One of the things I did want to point out, the city is planning on, with this new rollout, to offer discounts for low-income residents who ride e-scooters in equity zones. That makes me concerned. You're like, hey, if we predetermine this area is a marginalized community, whatever else, well, then you get, free, cheap transportation. But then another community over here that, oh, that's all white people, that's all a bunch of rich people or whatever else, and they're not, equity and blah, 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 then you're just going to have to pay the full price. Actually, you're going to have to pay more to subsidize for all the people in the poor or equity, inclusion, whatever you want to call it, area, which I personally, I don't like that. That right there, I think, is bad, and that is wrong. That I understand trying to help communities that are low income or whatever, and trying to say, hey, you're low income, here's a discount, whatever else, right? But not doing it in these like zone areas or whatever else. It feels just like kind of form of selective or segregation or different. I don't think it's right. I may be wrong. Maybe the way I'm reading into this wrong. I'm totally for kind of being nice to those that are lower income, kind of the food stamp, maybe a little bit and different stuff. I get that. But when you're starting to be like, yes, and equity zones and these people and blah, 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 and reparations and stuff, it gets me a little scared of what you're doing there, because it usually, when you affirm one group, you're disaffirming another, and you're doing the very thing you said you were going to do. You're like, hey, I'm not discriminating, but also I am kind of discriminating because I'm dividing people across their race or where they live in town and saying these people in this part of town get cheaper and this people don't. Well, then you've just done the thing you just said you weren't going to do, which is being selective, being segregative. You've separated, you've segregated between people. But that's a different thing. It'll be interesting to see how it all rolls out. I know Boise generally, compared to the rest of the state, leans a little bit more liberally, so that might have been just some buzzwords to throw in there. We'll see how the rollout ends up happening and how it kind of goes. A lot of this, on the bright side, kind of coming back to stress that, a lot of this looks really, really good. I'm kind of excited to see how it goes, especially with the scooters that allow you to go sit. That sounds awesome. Especially when you're trying to drive around Boise and stuff, to have the ability to just kind of sit and go and drive around. I think that's really, really cool to have, so you don't have just standing ones. And also adding the bike ones and everything, I think a really cool addition, and I think it'll actually be very good for the city of Boise. Now moving into the Quickies. If you haven't been here before, the Quickies are articles that I wanted to share that were still relevant, but weren't worth a full-on article and discussion, so I still wanted to get them to you. Our first one here is Boise Art Museum features ancient Egyptian technique. This comes by KTVB75 staff. For those in the art world, this is probably perfect for you. The Boise Art Museum has a new exhibit coming at the beginning of July. It is an exhibit about Catazone and Japanese migrant art. For those like myself who don't know what Catazome is, it is a Japanese method that uses a paste to dye fabrics, which are then stenciled. This practice dates back to the 7th century. The exhibit opens on July 1st with 7 different artists involved with it. Quoting the Boise Art Museum, quote, "The works preserve an endangered traditional technique while envisioning endless possibilities for dynamic cultural exchange," end quote. Next one up is Idaho helps Canada with wildfires. This comes by KTVB7 by Jude Binkley. As many of us have experienced or heard, there are a number of wildfires raging up in Canada. While there are firefighters from the United States jumping in to help our northern neighbors, this would also include Idaho firefighters. The National Interagency Fire Center, NIFC, is the country's support system for wildfires. Its headquarters is in Boise. 8 different agencies collaborate through this center. Quoting Candy Stevenson, the External Affairs Specialist for NIFC, quote, "The beauty about the National Interagency Fire Center is that all agencies come together. All the land management agencies come together, and we all have a responsibility to do wildfire suppression. It doesn't matter what agency you work for. When you are trained as a firefighter support personnel, the training is the same across all agencies. You can respond anywhere across the country or in any case internationally," end quote. Currently, 283 federal firefighters and support personnel from 14 crews are deployed in Canada. Idaho firefighters make up a chunk of that number, with 24 firefighters from Boise's Hot Shot Crew, 22 firefighters from the Idaho City Hot Shot Crew, and 19 firefighters from the Snake River Hot Shots. Idaho has also sent 4 overhead crew members. Speaking of bikes and public transportation, new bike park in McCall. This comes by the East Idaho News by Autumn Robertsons. It looks as if McCall will get its first bike park. The Flight Path Bike Park is planned for about 5 acres of undeveloped land north of Dinehard Lane and the McCall Airport, and just east of the city's existing paved trail system. The Central Idaho Mountain Bike Association partnered with the land group INC and the McCall Parks and Recreation Department to make this project happen. Central Idaho Mountain Bike Association is a nonprofit organization that promotes mountain biking in the McCall area. The land group is a real estate development company that owns the land where the bike park will be built. The City Path Bike Park would be a multi-use park that would accommodate riders of all skill levels. The park would include a variety of features such as jump lines, dirt trails, and pump tracks. The pump track is a type of trail that is designed to be ridden without pedaling. Riders use their momentum and body weight to propel themselves around the track. The Flight Path Bike Pack is expected to cost about $1 million to build. The Central Idaho Mountain Bike Association is raising money for the project through a variety of fundraising efforts, including grants, sponsorships, and individual donations. Once the necessary funding is in place, CIMBA hopes to break ground on the project in the summer of 2023 and open the park by the end of the summer of 2025. Chalk Festival in Idaho Falls. This comes by East Idaho News by Mary Boyle. Calling out all art lovers. This coming July, there is a sidewalk chalk festival. People will be showing their skill at chalk art for everyone with a bonus of some possible cash prizes. There are 3 categories for the chalk art competition: Chalk Master, Chalk Crusher, and People's Choice Award. The Chalk Master category will be judged by a committee of local artists and city representatives with a cash prize of $1,000. The Chalk Crusher winners will each receive $200, and the People's Choice Award has no cash prize, but has the satisfaction of knowing that the public enjoyed your art. The event is free for the public to attend, but there is a fee of $20 for the Chalk Busters and $25 for the Chalk Masters if you want to compete. This event will take place on July 15th at South Capitol Park from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Next is a exciting one, but short one. Average hourly wages in Idaho rise. This comes by the East Idaho News by Audrey Dutton. Following up on last week's good news about rent prices lowering, this week is an update on the hourly wages in Idaho. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, Idaho's average wage per hour reached $24.69. That is 7% higher than last year. Also, the median wage rose by 4%, now sitting at $19.26 an hour. Also, the report breaks down the wages based on different areas in the state. So if you're interested in that, you can go through that. Speaking of facilities opening in Idaho, new National Construction Manufacturing Plant opens. This comes by East Idaho News by Logan Ramsey. Morton Buildings, a 120-year-old post-frame construction company, has opened a new manufacturing plant in Pocatello. The plant is the company's 8th manufacturing plant and will stock the company's construction projects in Idaho, Montana, Washington, Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, and the other surrounding areas. The plant is located in the Pocatello Regional Airport Business Park and is 67,429 square feet. It currently employs 30 people, but Morton expects that number to increase over time as demand for its products increase. Morton Buildings is a 100% employee-owned company. That means that employees own stock in the company, so as the value of Morton stock increases, it directly benefits the workforce. Morton employees also have a sense of pride and ownership in the way they perform their jobs, which Kane says helps the company perform better. The opening of the new plant is a significant milestone for Morton Buildings. It represents the company's growth and its commitment to the future. CWI expanding their campus. This comes by several sources. The College of Western Idaho, CWI, is expanding its main Nampa campus with a new health and science building, student learning lab, and agricultural science and horticultural buildings. The health and science building will be 45,000 square feet and will consolidate multiple programs on the Nampa campus, including biology, nursing, and medical assistance. The building is expected to be completed in 2025. The Student Learning Lab will be 35,000 square feet and will house resources for student success, such as tutoring, advising, and career counseling. The hub is expected to be completed in 2024. And lastly, the Agricultural Science and Horticultural Building will be 30,000 square feet and will include a lab, classroom, greenhouse, and shop spaces. The building is expected to be completed in 2024. The expansion of the Napa campus is part of CWI's strategic plan to increase access to education and training for students in the Treasure Valley. And lastly, we come to Idaho Power asks to raise rates. This comes by the Boise Deb by Autumn Robertsons. Idaho Power has filed for an overall rate increase with Idaho Public Utilities Commission, IPUC. If approved, the average Idaho residential consumer that uses 950 kilowatts hours a month would see their monthly bill increase by $11.61, or about $140 a year. The increase would total $111 million, or 8.61% if approved. The IPUC will assess the request over the course of the next several months. In a press release, the Idaho Power president and CEO, Lisa Groh, said, quote, "We are sensitive to the impact rates increases have on our customers, and our company works hard to keep our expenses low and our prices below the national average. This case is largely focused on the infrastructure additions that have been necessary to reliably serve our growing customer base," end quote. Idaho Power said its last general rate increase was submitted in 2011, and since then its customer base has increased by 23%. The company also said it has made investments in new infrastructure, such as power lines and substations, to meet the needs of its growing consumer base. IPUC it will be holding a public hearing on the rate increase request on July 20th, 2023. The commission is expected to make a decision on the request by the end of the year. Thank you for listening to the entire podcast. I sincerely hope you found it enjoyable and valuable. If I missed any important points or provided incorrect information, please feel free to reach out to me via email at localyocalidaho2022@gmail.com or on my Twitter by tweeting me at localyocalidaho. As a one-man show, I'm not able to cover everything, but I will do my best to cover as much as possible. Thank you for your continued support and assistance. That's all for now, and I wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Godspeed.